Hello folks, this is Anne-Marie. Today is Wednesday, May the 29th, and this is the extended SPY report. We'll be moving pretty quickly through this stuff because I do want it to get up to you, and sometimes this takes quite a while to render, so we are going to look just specifically at these levels and talk about what's going on. These bigger lines here, these are the weekly pivots. All right, and we can see that we came in here and we are holding this pivot action here in SPY. Now, what that suggests is that we've got the ability to hang on to these upside events. Now, I did expect yesterday's chart to fade. I was not able to see any active intraday charts. Got some pricing, knew that Tesla was up at that last 102.54 target. I suggested taking some profit off but leaving the trade on. Turns out that was a very, very good suggestion to leave some of it on as the chart continued to run and then closed near 112. Actually is now printing 112 in the pre-market, and it should continue to run. There's still a tremendous short float in that stock, and so it continues to rally. But I digress. Talking here about SPY. Pre-market, we've got a bit of a dip, -6. And for SPY, that means we are tracking around. Looks like the low we hit this morning was somewhere around 165.27. Now, notice that's just underneath the gap fill event. Actually, since that is, let's see what the volume is. That's a white candle. Yeah. So it's filled the gap pre-market, but then again, you know, that's not really what it is that we want to see. We want to see a natural movement during the trading hours that fill the gap. All right. And right now what we are seeing, a gap that fills a gap, that really doesn't make for very pretty trading. This formation that I had still gives us this test of R1. So let's see where we are by Friday. And if indeed we have something like an ABCD pattern that is forming here with this leg, let's see what that is. Hang on 2 secs. So if we take a look at this, and let's say this is the ABCD pattern that's really gappy that we're trading with, I put it down here assuming that this might be the low that the chart prints this morning. Of course, if it's not, then this is, you know, a totally incorrect formation. I'm just looking at it in terms of saying, all right, if we hold this, what do we see? And if we come into this region, we begin to pop. This is showing a little bit of an ABCD pattern that might work out pretty nicely. Depends. Right? But that shows that's a bearish pattern, but it does show more upside momentum. And indeed, this actually might end up being some kind of crab. So, you know what? What we just have to do is wait it out and see what's going on. Here's the trade. This is the 50, right? And so we're going to look for the breach of the 50. This is the VWAP. Where is the VWAP monthly? Let's look for this. Things are looking quite solidly forward. Right now, if we lose this region right here, it does mean we are going to come into the pivot. Overall, the chart is moving to the upside. The levels we want to be concerned about to break down that upside momentum would be the pivot that is showing up. This is the prior day's pivot. And so we will be looking at that. These levels that I placed for the last time we did one of these, still holding as relative support. We might need to inch this one down just a bit. But now we have this area, and so I want to duplicate that. Let's put it there. See how that goes. All right, so if it loses the 65.15, we know we're going to go to the pivot. Listen, a lot of us with limited trading skills often look at these and we say, yes, but I don't know where to trade because you're telling me both sides. You've got to keep your mind open to the space and realize that what I'm trying to give you are patterns that you can run for several hours during the day. And if it holds something, listen, if it ends the day above the weekly pivot, chances are it's going to try and reach out for this level and use the same 50% rule. 167.50 would be the natural test. That's exactly what it did. Came right into the midline. Okay, so if it's sitting down at the midline, then, and it reverses and comes back and tests the pivot, what we want to see is just a positive test. Is it giving us a higher high, higher low? So far, looks good. We can move to the upside and use this as the target towards the end of the week, and that is what I'm thinking. But it is in a resolution zone, and from an intraday perspective, if we come down here as we have and we lose the 65.15 region, we know we're going to step down into this area and then this area, which seems to be very defended. Seems to be very, very defended. So 164.22 would be the hold area. If it loses that level, then we got to think a little bit more bearishly. But until it does, this step down area will be cautiously being short into these regions. And if they start popping, you take your profit right away. The pivot here is going to help us get back to see if we're on the upside. So if we pop off this 165.25-ish area that we are sitting off of the low now, right? We're at 165.38. Getting back up into 165.60 is going to be very, very critical. Probably the best thing to do is to watch it move up here. If it pulls back, make sure it holds, and then take the long, because it is very choppy. You see this? If I come down, and then I move up, and then I gap down, and then I move up, and then I gap up, and then I move down, in essence, I'm looking at flat momentum. You can't trade flat momentum with any level of certainty. It's got to be step by step into each level. Every single environment in a trading space requires a different train of thought. I do not have to be concerned about whether something's going to hold if it's moving up in a straight line. It's holding all my moving averages. When it pulls into support, I take it. That's just as easy as it is. When I have a flat moving average and things are gapping down and gapping up and filling the gaps and moving down and filling the gaps, that sort of thing, there's no level of reliability. So trading, it needs to be level to level. So carefully watch these levels and you'll be in good shape. Let's take a look at the IWM. Same kind of thing. Gap down, pull down, gap down, fill the gap down, fill the gap up, did not fill the gap, right? Just like the others, came into about the 50% region and has begun to pop. The IWM is moving much more strongly. That means, more risk on, right? Because people are more willing to spend money in small caps in these riskier environments. And so this morning, interestingly, we've got 98.52. Which is above the pivot, the weekly pivot. This is Friday's pivot action. Watch Monday's pivot this is Tuesday's pivot action. Let's watch Wednesday's pivot action. We're going to see it pop off of this level. If it's bullish, it's going to pop off of this level, come up into this 98.66 region, which is still very, very important. As you can see, these levels I placed from the last reading that I did, still very, very solid, holding these levels. See, when something gets into a target like this and it loses it, first thing you want to see is, does it get into the next one? And it almost did. If it begins to pop like that, you know your run down is over, right? So these levels are really pretty important still. And so the trade we have today is, if it bounces off of the weekly pivot, we are going to anticipate that it's going to move into this resistance level up here. So we're going to watch it pop up and hold the 98.66. If it does that, you'll be able to take it long, back up into at least the weekly VWAP, probably into this congestion region of 99.45. We are between the weekly and the monthly VWAPs. Very often, that means we move one to the other. So if we do lose this level, we do lose the pivot, we know that that's the region that we're probably going to come into. So we're going to watch it stair step down. Again, movement down, fill, gap down, fill, gap up, pull back. That's sideways action, and it is very, very unreliable to trade. So we trade level to level in this environment. Watch these levels that are marked here for you. The weekly pivot action, if you don't have motive wave and you need these weekly pivots, here they are. Let's see what the Qs are doing. Hang on. Qs have a low of 73.44 this morning. That's well under the pivot. Just at the gap fill. Very, very important. So let's put it right here. That's going to be an important level, right? This level didn't seem to be as important, so we're going to get rid of it. And that region has now shifted down to here. So this is looking a bit weaker. And of course, you know, I think Apple has a lot to do with that. That's moving very, very sideways. It lost everything and then some yesterday's trading day. So that's quite weak. But we're going to look to see it bounce off of this level. Hey, listen, if you're taking a trade, an aggressive long would be at the bounce off of this region, but see that it's pulled back right here. It is very close to the monthly VWAP, so it's pretty likely that it comes down to test here. What the broad market is saying today is that there is some downside pressure, right? And of course, that's natural. We are moving sideways. All right, let's look at these levels, and then I'm going to show you something very quickly on a wide angle lens. Because what the charts are really doing right now, they are in decision zone. Okay, so they're going to gap up and very skittish, right? Remember that moniker, sell in May and go away, is really something that people are thinking about in terms of saying, all right, do we hang out? Do we stay? What's going on here? And we're bouncing between the VWAPs. There's no decision. Nobody's made a decision about what's going on. We are not rolling over. We are not going to the moon right here. We are decisioning, okay? And so for people to hop into the, oh, we're in a global rally, listen, we're in an uptrend, no doubt about it. But see right here, see this VWAP? It's flat. See this relative motion here? It's flat. So we are just bouncing around to try to figure out what's going on. Frankly, we might bounce around like this all summer. I do not know. What I do know is that we can't sit around and go, okay, this is the rollover, I'm going short from here, or this is the next break to the upside, I'm going long from here. But we can trade level to level, and if the level holds, we can continue in the trade. But if the levels break, we must get out of the trade. It is very likely that the VWAP does create a suction event, and so the Qs do come into 73.14. That might be a bounce zone. If not, this weekly S1, we're going to take a look at this, see where it makes for Friday, right? Starting to work with these weekly pivots as well as the daily pivots for those of us that want to see some longer time frame action. All right, now let's take a look. Last thing. Look at the dailies. This is what I'm trying to explain. See this action right here? If I had gone long right here, I would be flat, right? So in essence, this last bit of motion for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, counting 8, which would be today, we've been in a flat zone. Now, a lot of motion in these candlesticks, so a lot of trading possibilities, but in a flat zone nevertheless. Let's take a look at the IWM. And the reason that I'm showing this to you is to tell you, listen, there's a space to be cautionary here. If you're looking at a chart that's doing this, you need to be cautionary. And we've got the same thing, again, a lot of action. We could watch these pullbacks, take the longs, breach over the area, we're in good shape, but overall we just must be extremely cautious about having any ideas that these charts are confirming one direction or another. They are not. So use caution, be careful, and trade level to level. All right, good luck today. I'll see you tomorrow.